Safety CJ Taylor will be among the SEC's best at the safety position.
You are Locked On Vandy, your daily podcast on the Vanderbilt Commodores, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Vandy podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Corey Burton. Thanks for making Locked On Vandy your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube as a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. In today's episode, we're going to discuss a position that will be low-key vital to success for Vandy, return specialist, special teams. What are realistic expectations for 2024? But before we touch on that, CJ Taylor is a special player and will be among the best in the SEC at the safety position. So, as I said, CJ Taylor, what he brings to the table for this defense, he's a special cat. He's going to lead this defense, and he's going to help drive expectations for the defense and maybe even for the rest of the team, because he'll be on some special teams, kick coverage units and all that stuff. So I'm excited to see kind of what he brings to the table. He's at the safety position. He is what you would call in baseball terms a five-tool player. Basically meaning he has versatility and he can do a lot of different things very, very well. He's tough against the run, physical. He's smart. He understands the system. It's been kind of a Clark Lee system since he's got there, kind of run through somebody else, but now it's directly through Clark Lee. And he's going to be the one kind of managing it from that free safety position. And he's going to be the one that gets everybody in check, not only on Saturdays, but throughout the week at practice too. He's going to be the one making the formation checks. He's going to be the one on the field relaying all the information. So he's going to be a special dude. He has great range, sideline to sideline. He's gotten better about that. He's more physical. He's tough against the run. And he's just got a knack for making big plays. And on top of all of his physical attributes, he's got a little bit of attitude about him that you want to see in one of your top defenders. He's somebody that will get this group to play above their heads because they lack superstars, okay? And when you lack superstars, you have to have that collective mentality of, okay, I'm going to give you every single thing I got plus more in order to be successful. And I think he can emotionally and mentally get these guys ready to play. And I think that's the impact he's going to make just himself on this defense and maybe even on the rest of this team, because I think he's going to be a team leader as well. So he is a very, very vital piece to this defense. And he's somebody that, I mean, if you look at the rankings in the SEC, he is one of the highest graded. He is the number 5 highest graded safety according to Pro Football Focus in the SEC returning for this year. So Wesley Walker's number 1, Hudson Clark from Arkansas is number 2 at 77. Zion Childers from Kentucky is at 76.5, and Al Walcott from Arkansas. So Arkansas has a pair of really good safeties, by the way, at 75.4, and at 74.6 coming in at 5th is CJ Taylor. Behind him is Dalen Carnell, Alex Afari from Missouri and Kentucky, respectively. Greg Brooks Jr. from LSU, Jalen Key from Alabama, and Donovan Kaufman from Auburn round out the top 10 highest graded safeties returning for this year. So when you look at that list, that's a pretty good list to be a part of. It's good that Vandy, even at 2-10, has some preseason recognition, something that you're probably not used to seeing. So that's really good. That's really something that's a positive going into the season, because we're always looking for those positives. If you can't find positives, then you can't find anything. And I'll be honest with you, in November, there was the closest thing to a positive was possibly a coaching change. But like I said, like I've been saying, Clark Lee has woken up a little bit. He has kind of had that moment of, oh, I better get this thing going, or I may be out of a job. I may be the defensive coordinator at insert Big Ten at Purdue. I don't know, just random Big Ten school. But instead, he's kind of gotten it together, and I think he's got a good nucleus going now. I think he's got a good system going now, and I think he's got something all these guys can buy into. So CJ Taylor is going to be that key piece in a position group, the secondary really, so safeties and quarters all kind of lumped in a position group that's going to drive this defense. Now, in order to meet expectations, which we'll kind of go over, I've been over them before, but I'll kind of go over some realistic expectations here for 2024. In order to get to that ultimate goal of bowl game and beyond, getting past that threshold, which means six wins and above, whatever you finish out with, this defense is going to have to be the calling card of this team. Truthfully, it's going to drive the defense. It's probably going to drive the culture of the team too. The offense is going to have to have some time to catch up. It's not all going to be a well-oiled machine game one. They just need to be good enough to beat Virginia Tech and improve each and every week. So the defense is going to have a big part of that early in the season, so that maybe later in the season the offense can kind of pick up some of the slack that they were missing while they were trying to get things together with brand new coordinator, brand new players, pretty much the entire New Mexico State roster, which that's kind of a benefit because you have a ready-made quarterback that knows the system and can help teach guys, and you have a running back and you have a coaching staff that knows the system. That will be a little bit easier to implement. But defensively, they're going to have to carry that. And the way this defense is constructed, it's not only CJ Taylor carrying the load, which he's going to have to carry. He's going to have to shoulder a big part of that burden as far as leadership and getting guys ready and kind of carrying the burden of making plays early on. Because if he makes plays early on, you're going to be, you're going to be in good shape, because those type of plays that he makes, like he kept Vandy in the game against Georgia. Like that game was closer than it probably should have been. And a lot of that was CJ Taylor was flying around. He had the defense believing they were flying around. And it was a combination of that and Georgia kind of sleepwalking a little bit. And, they were in the construction site with the swinging video board and getting changed in a pop-up tent. And, a lot of those factors played into it, but CJ Taylor they still had to play football at the end of the day. So CJ Taylor was a big part in that. So, but the secondary, I think you can't sleep on the secondary, Matt. I think when you look at how the secondary is constructed, I think you have really good corners and you're going to be able to play some man. And you have some really good options at the safety position. Like you have CJ Taylor obviously leading the way, but you have Maurice Hampton Jr. from LSU. You have Dante Carter as a freshman. You have Marlon Sewell. Certain looks will give you Randon Fontenette, probably more down in the box if they want to go kind of like a bigger nickel package. But you have some options there. At the safety position, you have some guys coming in, Jalen Lackey and Tate Hamby coming in from high school as well. But Dante Carter is an early enrollee, so he's got a leg up. So you've got some options there. But I think where you're going to really make a lot of your hay at the in the secondary as far as production goes is going to be at the corner spot. I think you're going to get really good coverage there. I think you're going to be able to do some combo coverages, maybe some stuff in the man coverage family, like cover one, cover two man, some different kind of creative things that you can do with guys that, when you have corners, you can go different personnel packages a little bit. Like you could probably go nickel light and throw in one of these corners in there. And I think you could do something like that where you drop in a corner and they guard a slot receiver. So you have Martell Height, which if you haven't seen Martell Height, he's a returner, not a returner, but like a returning player. There's a highlight of him on X on Vanderbilt Football's X account where he is blanketing a receiver. I can't remember what receiver it was, but he's blanketing the receiver and then he turns and reaches up as he's turning, as he's tracking the ball, snags it with one hand, brings it down, kind of like tips it to himself and then brings it in for the interception. It was in a one-on-one rep. So it wasn't like a team scenario. It was just kind of like one of those one-on-one competition periods, but he made a really outstanding play on the ball. He's somebody that hasn't really been mentioned because I've been talking about all the transfers all the time, but he's somebody that you can look at and say, okay, he's going to be pretty good. Mark Davis Jr. and Colby Taylor and Marlon Jones coming in from transfer. I think you have a FCS superstar in Marlon Jones. He was all conference, all Big Sky in a program like Eastern Washington. they are pretty good. That's a pretty good program at the FCS level. So you're gonna see him come in and make an immediate impact. He's a little bit smaller, but he's shifty. He's got good coverage skills. He's not going to be a ton of help on the run game, but he's not scared to put his face in there. But I just don't think that's going to be his big strength. Colby Taylor is a massive target out there. You see him on it's just physically imposing. He may not be as good as shifty as Marlon Jones, but he's somebody that you look at. He could probably come in if you want to do like a 3-corner package where you bring in Colby Taylor. He's a little bit taller, can guard some guys in the slot. That's also an option that gives you a little creativity. Same with Mark Davis Jr. If you had, a bigger slot receiver or an athletic tight end, like Eli Stowers, but for somebody else's team. Like if you're not playing Georgia this year, but if you were, you could put him on somebody like Oscar Delp or some of those slightly bigger receivers. You could you can match size with size a little bit and have a great coverage guy. So you have options there, and I think that's going to help a great secondary in a passing game like it is now. Is great for the pass rush, because if you have guys that are blanketing, especially if you're in some sort of like press zones and like different types of jam coverages and bump and run stuff, and if it's man, if it's cover 2, if it's something where the corners are up in the faces of the receivers and not letting them off the line, that kind of thing. When I say secondary will drive the defense, that's what I'm talking about. The coverage skills, the disguising of coverages, the ability to guard one-on-one out on the perimeter, things like that will help slow down the ball coming out and will allow these defensive linemen to get there. Will allow Corday Sindor to get there. Will allow Zaylen Wood to get there. Will allow some of these edge guys to get there, or if they do some inside linebacker blitzes with Prince Collie and Langston Patterson, it'll allow Anias DeCosmo to get there. I mean, there's often different things that the defensive front can do based on having good coverage. So having these superstars will be beneficial to all of this. I think it's going to be paramount because it's what's going to drive expectations. And like I said early on, you have to have good defensive play. That's how you're going to survive. That's how you're going to start the season 3-0. It's not going to be a show with the offense. Like I think the offense is just sometimes offenses just don't click right away. Look at Georgia last year. You look at their offense at the beginning of the year versus at the end of the year, two totally different things. The beginning of the year, it seemed very laborious, and they were the number 1 team in the country. It seemed very laborious to score points. At the end of the year, they blew out Ole Miss, which was one of the favorites to possibly make the playoff or the SEC championship. Like that's how it goes. Like that's how you develop, right? And you kind of just go make mistakes and hope your defense can bail you out, which is what Georgia did. And Georgia had a easy schedule too, so that helped. But had they had a tougher schedule, it still would have been kind of the same. Like defense was going to have to bail them out in certain situations. And unfortunately, sometimes in key situations, your defense just has to be there to stand up to whatever you need. So that's what's going to help drive expectations. But what are the realistic expectations? What is best case or worst case scenario? We'll talk about that next. All right. Passion, drive, and patience is the formula for winning championships, is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number 1 ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easier to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. So keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN? Well, you're probably tired of all that shouting. You're probably having to turn the TV down so people don't know, so people don't think you're in a shouting match with somebody. Well, anyway, that's why you should make the switch to Locked On Sports Today. That's right. That's why you should make that. It's a free 24/7 sports streaming channel program for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. That's right. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't-miss analysis, opinions, and news, streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So we talk about expectations. Great expectations, right? So what are the realistic ones? Okay. Well, the expectations, obviously, with this program, get bowl eligible and win every game you're in. That's anytime you talk to a coach, hey, we're going to win every game we're in. We're going to go 1-0 every week. That's the expectation. Okay. But we got to be realistic, especially on the outside looking in, because we don't know exactly what's happening on the inside there on West End. So I can't tell you definitively, hey, they're going to win 6 games this year, or they're only going to win 3 games. They suck, or, whatever the case may be. I can't tell you definitively. So we have to kind of prognosticate it. There's that big word. We have to kind of prognosticate it based on what info that we have. And we set realistic expectations, and then we set best case and worst case off of that. Okay. So let's start with best case scenario. Okay. I think best case scenario for 2024, given that a lot of things are new, a lot of new transfers in, I don't want to say new system on defense, but it's a new way of running the system on defense, because I think Clark Lee's always kind of driven the scheme. He just haven't steered the ship since he's been here. He's had defensive coordinators do that, and now he's finally taking it over. He's taking the wheel on that, so that's still a little bit different. You have brand new offensive coordinator, brand new way of doing things, brand new system, brand new quarterbacks, a lot of brand new players on the offensive side of the ball. So you have to kind of set your expectations based on that, right? So I think best case scenario, 6 wins, maybe 7. Okay, 7 is best. Dude, we this is a banner year for Vandy this year. Okay, as Vandy steadily becomes bigger players in the NIL game, hopefully. We'll talk about there's a court case that's going with NCAA versus the House that I'll address on the next episode. But you have to set your expectations there. I think your best case scenario, best case scenario is 7 wins. I think realistic best case scenario, 6 wins in a bowl game, whatever bowl game you can get with that, based on the bids. So, and I think that's very much possible. I think, it's going to come down to one of your last games against South Carolina, LSU, or Tennessee to get to that bowl eligibility, because I think it's a pretty tough schedule. But I think realistically, South Carolina is going to be the game. That's going to be the deciding factor. You win that game. If you get to a point where the South Carolina game is a big game and you win it to make a bowl, I think Vandy gets it done, wins it, and makes a bowl, because I think this team is that hungry. Okay. So worst case scenario, you start the season. I think at worst case scenario, you're going to start the season at 2-3. So that's winning Alcorn and Georgia State, but losing in your first 5, but losing Virginia Tech, Missouri, and Alabama. And I think what would lead to worst case scenario of now losing the rest of those games except for Ball State, still hitting the over. I still think worst case is still hitting the over versus FanDuel, unless that over under is going to increase. I think you should take it right now at -2.5, or at 2.5 wins right now, because I think even at worst case scenario, they still hit that. But at worst case scenario, they win 3 games. After Ball State, they just lose them all out and get shellacked. I think that's worst case scenario. Whereas you have a strong Kentucky team, you have a strong South Carolina team, you have a strong Auburn team that crunches you on the road, which Jordan-Hare Stadium is kind of that way. So where do I think realistically they can be? I've always said bowl game. I'm going to maintain that, but I think for the level of success, if you're measuring this is a successful season or not, that's kind of what I'm talking here. I think my expectations are bowl game, because I think they're good enough right now with the scheme, with what they have coming in and the pieces they have. I think they're good enough to win 6 games on this schedule. That's going to take upsetting Kentucky, Auburn, and South Carolina to do so. I think those are where your wins are. And we'll dive more into that and why I think that on a different episode. But I think that's kind of where your wins lie. I think best case scenario, I think realistic, successful season. Okay. I'm thinking in best case terms because that's just how I think. But I think realistic, I think if you win 4 or 5 games, I think you can consider that. I think you could kind of consider that a success. If you win 5 games, you can consider that successful. 4 games, you can say, depending on how the other 8 games shake out with your losses, you can kind of determine it could kind of like that's your kind of your swing game where you could go like, oh God, this was a terrible season, 4-8. We got smacked in all the games that we didn't win, and we barely won the games that we won. Like I think that's how you look at it. Or you win your 4 games, you win them decisively, and you're competitive, and you lose at the last minute, or like there is such a thing in Vandy's case as good losses, right? Moral victories. I hate using that word. I hate saying moral victories because I hate what it implies. Because you're just like, yay, I'm just happy to be here. But in realistic terms, like if you get some moral victories, that helps with recruiting. The winning will take care of itself as you build that, hey, we're in the right direction here. We were just off. If there's like a few plays that separate you from 4-8 to 6-6, like you can kind of use that as a springboard in recruiting and saying, hey, offensive lineman, if you show up, we win those games, right? Or, hey, linebackers, like if we had better linebackers, we win that game. And of course, these expectations will change and ebb and flow based on injuries. If you get a rash of injuries, well, then strength and conditioning ended up not being as good. And now your expectations are, let's just try to win the 3 that we're favored in and just move on and get guys healthy, play the best we can. Because there's not really a ton of depth built just yet. It's just not there yet. It can be there, but that's another springboard in recruiting. That's another thing you can look at and say, hey, recruiting, if we can recruit these guys, if you come here, you're going to get good at NIL money because Nashville, Vandy, like there's things to be had. There's opportunity to be had. And there's also playing time opportunity. Like the NFL, it doesn't matter where you play for the NFL. If you're good enough, they'll find you. Doesn't matter where you're playing. They'll find you. And if you're playing at Vandy in the best league, it's not hard to find you because they're going to be, if you show up on somebody else's tape, like let's say they're at Texas and they're watching a Vandy game on a Texas prospect and they see you, well, they're going to start digging. They're going to be like, hey, dude, that has Vandy in your territory. Like you should go check out so-and-so. You should go check, like, hey, CJ Taylor's really making some plays out there. You should go check him out. Something like that. That's how that happens. So expectations are win the games you're supposed to, be competitive enough to go either way on the games that are toss-ups, and be competitive and have good showings in the ones that you're not going to be favored in by any close margin, like Alabama, Missouri, Tennessee, and LSU. So, and Texas. To just do what you have to do in those games to make yourself competitive and set yourself up for success in the middle part of the season where you have like a 3-game stretch where you can win some ball games. So that's the realistic expectations. It all helps recruiting. So like, even if you lose good, it will show that, hey, if we can recruit either from the portal or high school, if we get this talent in, we're just like one piece short here, one piece short there. So anyway, speaking of pieces, in order to achieve these expectations, in order to go from 4-8 to 6-6, special teams is a huge thing. If you can be elite in special teams, that helps you in these tight ball games. Returner is a paramount position. Who's going to be there and what's it going to look like? We'll talk about that next. All right, welcome back. Wrapping up the show here. Thank you for making Locked On Vandy your first listen each and every day. Make sure you click over to Locked On SEC with Chris Gordy. He does a phenomenal job over there while as he discusses all things happening in the SEC. As I maintain, if you want to be the most educated fan base in the conference, make sure you check out the other shows in the SEC for this network: Locked On Ole Miss, Locked On Auburn, Locked On Longhorns, Locked On Bama, so on and so forth. Just take Vandy's schedule, go down the list, and say, is there a Locked On show for that? And you go check it out, because there probably is. And you can make that happen. So make sure you go check those out as well. Make sure you become well versed on it and know thy enemy. So anyway, return specialist. Okay, here's the key with return specialist, and I know what you're thinking. I know exactly what you all thinking. Why are you talking about return specialist? Well, you don't know how important a return specialist is until you have an elite one. Okay. I guarantee you, Miami, they kind of know, but they didn't know how important that position was for Devin Hester until Devin Hester did what Devin Hester does. And they realized that makes up for a lot of deficiencies, because that team wasn't great that year. They went to a pretty good bowl game. Most of his time there, they went to good bowl games. They were starting to kind of come back down off those monstrous national championship teams. With Devin Hester, he kind of helped propel them into some and there were some wins that they had just because of Devin Hester. Not saying that the next Devin Hester is sitting on Vanderbilt's roster. I don't think that, or I don't know that, but I certainly don't think that at this moment until proven otherwise. But it is extremely important, and it can make a massive difference in the outcome of ball games. Just think about what special teams does. Okay, your coverage units can flip the field, get turnovers, and provide momentum. Your return games can set up great field position and get you set up in scoring position. Okay, there's certain scenarios where you get a great return. Next thing you know, you're in scoring position, and a drive that you weren't sure if you were going to score on became a drive that you scored on, because you return it and at least get a field goal. If you can get 3 points or 6 or 7 points out of a drive where your defense was thinking it was going to be pinned, it was thinking it was going to leave your offense in terrible field position where you were going to start inside the -10 to drive 90 yards. Well, you get a good return. Next thing you know, you're at the +30, and now you got points in a series that you didn't think you were going to get points, and you flip field position. Well, if you score points, you're not really flipping field position, but you're not getting pinned back deep in your own territory and having to fight out of the shadow of the goalpost. So having a good return man is extremely important for that reason. Also, think of the momentum that happens. I remember watching Devin Hester, and I keep using Devin Hester because he's probably one of the greatest to do it as a returner. Ed Reed was this for Miami and those national championship teams. Prime was great at this at Florida State and with the Atlanta Falcons and the Dallas Cowboys. You look at some of the greatest return specialists out there. You don't know that they exist until they exist. Damian Gary for Georgia. You don't know that they exist until they exist, okay? You don't know how good they can be for you until they're good for you. So those guys, you kick it to them, they change the game. It forces punters to kick away from them if they don't want to return. Sometimes punters shank kicks because of these great return specialists, right? Same with kickoff. You get nervous on kickoffs if you have good return specialists. So who those guys are going to be for Vandy? Okay, I'll take a quick minute to kind of discern who those guys are going to be. Who's a couple of candidates? Well, I think Jeremiah Dillon's a candidate. I think Darian Wiley's a candidate. I think Micah Bell's a candidate. I can see a world where Micah Height is somebody that can return stuff, and I can see a world where you have CJ Taylor returning. That's kind of a thing as well. So those guys are going to kind of battle it out. I don't know which one is going to. If I had to give you an educated guess, because I haven't seen those other guys really return, I would say Darian Wiley and Micah Bell, based on the film that I've seen from them. high school film for Michael Bell because he didn't do any sort of return stuff at Notre Dame as a DB. But Darian Wiley has some good return stuff on his high school highlights. They have the capability to do it. Jeremiah Dillon, just because he's so smooth, I think would be a good kick returner. But I think Michael Bell could be your lead punt returner because he's tough, he's small, he's shifty, he's whatever. Good slot guys are that. Marquise Barrett from the incoming freshman group would also be a good candidate for that as well. So it's just paramount, dude, to have a good return guy, to have a couple good return guys that can really kind of blow the game open. And so with that comes great results. And if you want to go from 4 wins to 6 wins, there's going to be a couple games where like you can really make some stuff go in special teams. One of the things that when you play Kentucky that you have to worry about is Barryon Brown. Why? Because he's freaking lightning. He is lightning when he in the return game. You have to worry about that, right? That's gonna help them with their season. It's gonna help Vandy too. So anyway, well, that's gonna do it for us here on this Wednesday edition of the Locked On Vandy podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network. Thank you for listening. Hope you like what you hear. If you did, make sure you subscribe, be a friend, tell a friend, spread the word, spread the gospel of the Locked On Vandy podcast. But until next time, we'll catch you back here later. And congratulations to everybody that's graduating. Congratulations to everybody that's graduated from colleges. But congratulations to all the high school graduations that are taking place over the next week or so. But congratulations to all you guys too as well. But until tomorrow, anchor down, be good, behave yourself. Peace.